Before I get into the top 10 teams, if I were to tell you that it would take this to get Myles Garrett, what would be your reaction? Tell me in the comments, obviously in the chat. Lions, we get Myles Garrett. We get a 4th round pick in 26 and a 5th round pick in 27. Oh, by the way, yes, you can go out 3 years. That's the max in the NFL. You can go out for 3 years worth of picks. That's this year, next year, and the year after. That's it. That's as far out as you can go. So we get a 4th and a 5th in successive years, 26 and 27, and we get Myles Garrett. But this is what we have to give up. We have to give up this year's 28th pick, 26's first pick in the first round, and 27's first pick in the first round. 3 first-round picks. Why Brad Holmes has not brought in the most elite of elite players. Ian said it best. He said these players are never available. They are never traded. It's funny because Brad Holmes said the same thing, and he said it multiple times. Even when we brought in Zadarius Smith, he said the same thing this past offseason when he closed the season for us in his postseason press conference. These guys aren't available. There was a handful of non-starters that we thought could start that were available. None of the starters are available. And by starters, that means Myles Garrett and the guy starting on the other side. Or it could just be the top 32 starters in the league that are just never available. And I would probably lend to agree with the latter there, that it's the top 32 starters in the league that are usually just not available. But more importantly, it's probably the top 10. And that's obviously where Myles Garrett lives, is he's in the top 10. So one thing that came out in his message was he kind of used Andrew Berry's words against him when Andrew Berry said going straight from Cleveland to Canton. And Garrett came out and said the plan was never to go from Cleveland to Canton. He doesn't want to go to Canton without a Super Bowl ring. And so utilizing his words against him, I think that was a direct attack against Andrew Berry to say, look, I want out. I want out. I want out now. The thing that I think that makes this decision easier for Andrew Berry and the Browns is you just had the absolute worst contract in NFL history with Deshaun Watson. A fully guaranteed was a $240-some-odd million deal. The guy's played like a half a season of snaps. He's had some of the worst stats in the NFL since this all went down. A lot of us thought that Deshaun Watson must have some paper on the NFL, and that's how that deal got done, because I'm sorry, with everything that he's been through, he shouldn't even be in the NFL. That's just my personal take. You can get a lot of that back. That was the other thing that was stated by these insiders. You can get a lot of this back. This would be a very smart move for the Browns to step away from Myles Garrett, give him what he wants, and at the same time, you are going to start digging yourself out of this giant hole that you just dug yourself into. With all that, Riley, when this news broke yesterday, I didn't have a chance to talk with you about it or have you come on yesterday. What went through your head when you saw this news?
Just how rare it is. You made mention of that too, and I know you jumped as soon as I saw the news. I was at work, and then I had the notification. Will's already on it. He's going live and talking about it, and it's just this is the type of move that could totally reboot your franchise. It's very much like what happened when Stafford wanted out of Detroit, but you go to see the difference because that was behind closed doors. They made an agreement. Hey, we're going to look to find you a new situation that will be a winning situation for you. And then it's already been reported that the Browns have come out and said, no, we're not trading him. So they're not on the same page. And that just goes to show how rare it was with Stafford's deal with the Lions. They were understanding, they accommodated him. This is going to be super interesting because these players of caliber, like the caliber of Myles Garrett, very rarely hit the open market. And so you start looking at what's the asking price. A few first rounders, 2 first rounders maybe. Somebody's got to pay up. But yeah, this is just uncharted territory, I feel like. And for Deshaun Watson, his contract absolutely plays into this. Just a mess for the Cleveland Browns. It's a situation that I would not want to be in. I'm glad I'm not a Cleveland Browns fan. I recognize I'm a Lions fan, but it's a hell of a lot better than being a Cleveland Brown fan, I feel.
We've kind of been one of the same for many decades. There's a lot of parity between the Lions and the Browns, and we're finally on the other side of it, right? And at what point are the Browns going to get back on the right side of the NFL? And I think that it just takes time, but it also takes smart moves. You have to have a competent GM that is not willing to hold his team ransom over one player. The Lions weren't going to hold themselves ransom over Matthew Stafford, right? They knew that Stafford gave all he could for 12 years, and they moved on, and they got 2 first-round picks in Jared Goff. Yep. And those 2 first-round picks turned into multiple other picks down the line, which are now Pro Bowl, all-pro players on this team.
No, if you're exactly right, and if you're Cleveland, do you not feel like Myles Garrett's done everything he can for you, right? Do you really feel like you're that close to winning a championship? Why would you hold a guy hostage? He wants out. let him out. And I'm sure they're going to eventually. How do you can't try to talk it back in. I mean, it's a mess of a situation. Send him out, get some capital, and then start over. But then again, um, I don't know what reason they have to believe that they would get it right.
So if we were to revisit like the Lions trade, I mean, I think that this is going to be on the scale of the Lions Matthew Stafford trade.
For sure.
You've got Stafford, goes to the Rams. The Lions got Jared Goff, a 2021 third, a 2022 first, and a 2023 first. Well, in the 2021 draft, we picked up Ifeatu Melifonwu. That one didn't really shake out the greatest. But in 2022, we picked up, after a few moves, wide receiver Jamison Williams and Josh Paschal. In 2023, we ended up with Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, Broderick Martin. So our trade turned into Jared Goff, Jamison Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, Josh Paschal, Broderick Martin, Ifeatu Melifonwu. So when people look at what Brad Holmes has done, and they question what he's done, and they question Broderick Martin, that was a free pick. You know what I mean? Like, Brad Holmes turned 3 picks and a player into 6 picks and a player. And J-Mo will be, at some point, a top-tier wide receiver in the league. Gibbs is already an all-pro in my book. Sam Laporta is already an all-pro. Josh Paschal, he's better than average. Melifonwu, average. Broderick Martin hasn't played. But you've got 4 studs that came out of that trade. Laporta, Gibbs, Williams, and Goff. You couldn't have asked for anything better than that.
You could not have.
So if Andrew Berry's going to hold his team ransom, that's not going to help him. Dude, if you were to get 2 firsts and a third in replacement for Garrett, you could totally turn that franchise around. And oh, by the way, you're going to drop 40 some odd million off of your books. You're in the hole, minus 27 million. You have about a few weeks before you have to get that on the right side of zero. This is one of the ways that you could possibly do that. Before I get into the top 10 teams, if I were to tell you that it would take this to get Myles Garrett, what would be your reaction? Tell me in the comments, obviously in the chat. Lions, we get Myles Garrett. We get a 4th round pick in 26 and a 5th round pick in 27. Oh, by the way, yes, you can go out 3 years. That's the max in the NFL. You can go out for 3 years worth of picks. That's this year, next year, and the year after. That's it. That's as far out as you can go. So we get a 4th and a 5th in successive years, 26 and 27, and we get Myles Garrett. But this is what we have to give up. We have to give up this year's 28th pick, 26's first pick in the first round, and 27's first pick in the first round. 3 first-round picks. Are you still in the boat of F them picks for a defensive end that could get hurt on play 1 of the NFL season? Riley?
No. Nope. I don't want to take away the best asset that Brad Holmes has, which is his draft picks, and especially a first-round pick. You had me at maybe 1, but once you start reading into a couple others, it's too much. It's too rich.
So I think that the problem that fans that don't dive into this stuff on the daily, there's probably 10% of the fan base, and I'm not knocking anybody. I'm just saying there's probably 10% of us that really get into this stuff. Really, and I'm no professional, right? I mean, I think I do a lot more than the average fan does, but that's because I have to do this every day because I love it. And I'm trying to bring good content to people. So I'm trying to give you the information. If you were to look at this from a fan's perspective that doesn't know a whole lot about the NFL or the NFL's history or trade history, you'd probably look at that and say, that's way too much, right? Now, if you look at it from the other end and you're someone that does it every single day and you work for ESPN and you're literally breaking down contracts, you're saying hell no to that trade. You're giving up 3 first-round picks for 1 player, and you get a 4th and a 5th in return. Like, keep your 4th and a 5th. I don't even want it. 3 first-round picks? There's no way. But that could be what it takes to get Andrew Berry to get off of his soapbox. Because just during the Senior Bowl, he said, when he was asked about trading Myles Garrett this season, he was affirmed in his notion that, when asked, hey, did you already turn down 2 first-round picks for Garrett last year? And he said, correct. You could put that on the record. So he already turned down 2 first-round picks. That tells you it's going to take more. Or is Barry trying to play hardball? And see, this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where good, savvy GMs that maybe know who Barry is or understand that the Browns are in a financial crisis. They're in cap purgatory. Which I coined that term last year. I see everybody likes to use it now. It's kind of cool, right? And even in late December, he said that he wasn't going to trade Myles Garrett. And even back then in a Hard Knocks episode in January 14th, Garrett said that he had talked to Barry about getting the most out of the talent that they have there and trying not to make this a rebuild. And Garrett said that he thought, quote, "We're closer than some may think we are," meaning the team and the talent on the team. Something has changed. And something has changed because now Garrett is clearly coming out and saying this is a rebuild. And I know it's a rebuild and I want out. So something has changed within the confines of Cleveland. But what hasn't changed is Myles Garrett. And Myles Garrett wants out. And he wants out because he's at the peak prime of his career. Almost the other side of that, walking down the other side of the back end of the hill, right? He wants out. I don't shame him for that. I think that he's making the best decisions for himself. That's what you have to do in this league. So let's get into the top 10. Top 10 here is this simple. Atlanta Falcons. Browns get the 2025 first round pick, which is number 15 overall, and a 2026 first round pick. 2025 first, which is number 15, and a 2026 first round pick, which is probably going to be in the same area. And the Falcons get Myles Garrett. Now, for 2 first round picks, I would do it. Now, making this move would be risky for the Falcons, but if an elite edge rusher is available, they have to at least get all the decision makers in a room, or obviously have a discussion. And the Falcons obviously are famously, bad at rushing the quarterback. They were 31st in the NFL in sacks this season with 31, and last in the league over the past 5 seasons. So they're just not great. They're not great at getting after the passer. But are the Falcons a competitive team right now for a Super Bowl? Riley, what do you think?
They're a hell of a lot closer than Cleveland. I would say that, I feel.
Yeah, when we're talking about teams that are knocking on the door.
I don't know. I don't think Atlanta's knocking on the door, I wouldn't say.
I think that if Garrett's going to go somewhere, it's going to be a team that was in the divisional or better.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm looking at. I think it's a divisional team or better. Buffalo Bills. Browns get 2025 first round pick, which is number 30. They get a second round pick in 2025, which is number 62. They get a fourth round pick, and then 2026 first round pick, and then also AJ Epinesa and cornerback Kaiir Elam. What? Like that's a ton. AJ Epinesa's a dog. I would have loved to have had AJ Epinesa on this squad this last year. So now they're giving players and picks away. So they're giving up a 2025 and a 2026 first, which is going to be a 30 this year and probably the same or similar next year. And then a second round pick in this year's draft and a fourth round pick in this year's draft and 2 players. So they're going to have to take on some cap and they're going to take on some picks. They would give up Garrett. The Browns would give up Garrett and a third round pick to Buffalo in 25 and a 6th round pick in 25. I mean, that one makes a little bit more sense where you're trying to give up some players for Garrett to kind of reduce what you're giving up in draft capital, but that's a ton of draft capital. You're still giving up 2 first round picks and a second and a fourth, and you're getting back a third and a 6th. I think it's way too rich. It's way too rich. But the Bills are knocking on the door, and if they're only giving up AJ Epinesa and Kaiir Elam, now keep in mind I haven't gone through every team to look at each team's scenario for 2025, and are they stacked? I mean, do they have a lot of players re-signed? Can they run it back, or are they in a situation where they need these picks? Right, to reload, or is it all in? Right, you're all in. This is a kind of move for these kind of picks. Like you are all in to get a Super Bowl. Now, keep in mind, anyone can get injured on any given day. How about the Bears? So I saw this earlier. Someone in the chat said, "Well, the Lions need to go out and get Garrett so that the Bears, or the Packers, or the Vikings don't." My answer to that would be, if they go out and get Garrett, we better go out and get a better offensive lineman. It's that simple. If you have to worry about another team and them bringing in Myles Garrett, then you just better beef up your offensive line. And I'm telling you right now, Taylor Decker's not the answer to that. He's not. And I haven't gone through the history again to look at the times that we have gone up against the Browns and what we've been able to do against Myles Garrett. I don't know what his performance has been like versus the Lions, but I will tell you that he probably won't line up a whole lot against Penei Sewell. It'll be on the other side. So the Chicago Bears give up the 2025 first round pick, which is number 10, and a second round pick, number 41, and a 2026 first round pick. The Bears simply get Garrett. So 2 first and a second. I think the theme that we're seeing here is that it's going to require 2 first round picks. If it was just 2 first round picks, Riley, would you give up 2 first round picks for Garrett?
even that, I mean, if the announcement was made that they made that trade and it was 2 first round picks, I'd be very excited. But even that still borders on the line of, because you're looking at how much you got to pay him. You still got to keep in mind, you always talk about the roster roulette. Everyone that's on the up and up getting paid for the Lions. I don't know, man. It's one of those things. Like if it were during the season and you're bringing him in, maybe. But this is a guy that's going to get moved this offseason. So I don't know, man. Two first round picks. Maybe I'm crazy. It's Myles freaking Garrett we're talking about, but I'd kind of still rather have the picks.
Well, I think 2 first round picks is that's the entry to just ring
That's
the doorbell
fair.
here, right? That's the entry to pick up the phone. That
Mm-hmm.
you have two first round picks you're willing to give up. Now, there was something else the insider said that, okay, there's a timeline, there's a process to this. Now, I'm utilizing, their audio, right, to kind of share something that I was going to say, just so it has a little bit of levity to it. When you enter these negotiations, you've got the start of free agency, where a lot of conversation starts. Okay, so that's the entry to what's happening with Garrett. So that's a few weeks away. It's more than a few weeks. It's like over a month away. And then you have the draft. So leading up to the draft, like that's the next and last stop before you're already looking at 2026. If you can't get off Garrett by the draft, well, then you're definitely looking at 2 first round picks for 26 and 27 at a minimum. And then it goes out to a holdout in training camp, which I don't think Garrett gives a shit. I think that he'll hold out. And he's probably already told them, I'm going to hold out. You can find me all you want. What did I say last year to the guys that held out? When they get their new contract, they get all that money back. All the money that they were fined, they get back. It happens every time. When a player holds out, they hold all the cards. Because before they come back, there was Devontae Adams. Before they come back, they've already got to renegotiate that every penny you find me, I'm getting back in this deal. So if he holds out, who cares? He'll get traded at some point. But I think that the entry level, the bar, is now on the Detroit Lions. The Browns get the 2025 first round pick at number 28. They get a third round pick in 2026. They get a 2025 first round pick, number 28, and our third round pick in 2025. They get 2026 first round pick. And I don't know why this freaking name keeps getting thrown around, but they get Hendon Hooker. Hooker is worth nothing. And I don't mean that negatively towards Hendon Hooker. From a monetary perspective of his trade value.
Exactly.
He's worth nothing.
He's worth way more to the Lions than he is to anybody else at this point, right?
Exactly. And so I think I understand the thought process here is Deshaun Watson is done for the season. They need a quarterback. Lions trade Jamison Williams, 2025 first round pick, and a 2026 second round pick for Myles Garrett. Do you do it? You got 3 seconds.
No.
Okay. See how hard that is? J-Mo's not going anywhere. Okay. No. You trade J-Mo, you trade Hendon, and you trade 2026 first round pick, 2027 second round pick. No. You kept your 25 first. Then you kept your 27 first. Okay.
No, still no for me.
What makes sense? How much are you guys willing to pay? So tell me in the comments and in the chat, how much are you willing to pay?
It's a great question. When you look at what Stafford got, but that's the quarterback. And it had to be the right situation. As good as Myles Garrett is, I mean, he hasn't made Cleveland a winner. No single player can do it by himself. But yeah, if you look at Garrett on the other side of Hutchinson or on the same line as Hutchinson, yeah, that'd be amazing. But what is Myles Garrett? How does he raise the ceiling of the team that's already really high? He'd certainly help, but not at the expense of losing first round draft picks, a Jamison Williams, a valuable backup quarterback even as part of it. It's just too much.
Okay, so let's walk down. Let's mix this in with free agents that are available. All right, I'm going to start at the top. Khalil Mack is listed as one of the top free agents that are available. And I'm going to be very quick with this one. He's old. He plays in a 3-4 defense. He's not the Lions. Never going to happen. Number 2, Josh Sweat. He's listed as a number 2 overall free agent from the Philadelphia Eagles. He's also going to command a boatload. It won't be 2 first round picks. Well, he'll be a free agent. My apology. But in a trade, it wouldn't take 2 first round picks to get him. As a free agent, yeah, you're going to end up paying the dude 20 plus million a year. So that wouldn't make any sense. Because then if you're going to pay someone 20 million, you might as well pay Myles Garrett, right? But then again, you also have to give up a bunch of draft capital to get Myles Garrett. So then now you're back on the other side of the fence. If I really need to go all in and bring in an edge, okay, then I bring in Josh Sweat on a 3-year deal at $75 million. Probably could get it done. Probably could. But is he worth it? Is that really going to fix all the other issues that you need to fix on your defense? Probably not. Hassan Reddick, at one point I would have brought him in, but again, you're talking about a smaller outside linebacker style of play, 3-4 defense style of play. I can't imagine that the Jets are going to want to move away from him now that Aaron Glenn is there. He's going to love Hassan Reddick. They're probably going to try to keep him. So I'm out on that one. All right, how about the Raiders' Malcolm Kuntz? Well, if he hadn't suffered a season-ending knee injury before 2024 even began, and instead carried over his momentum, back from 2023, yeah, he could have been in the top 10 list. But then again, do you want to bring in a guy that is freshly injured? Another injury-prone individual? Does Kuntz even move the needle for you? Not really for me. His comparison is Romeo Okwara. I think that we're done with the Okwaras, right? I don't want another Okwara. How about Arizona Cardinals' Baron Browning? Now, the Broncos traded Baron Browning ahead of the deadline to the Arizona Cardinals, a team that was in desperate need of pass rush help. And there was a logjam of good edge defenders in Denver with the recent extension of Jonathan Cooper and the continued emergence of Nick Bonito. Browning's 14.2% pressure rate over the 22-23 seasons ranked 24th among edge defenders. And he converted from off-ball linebacker to a full-time edge rusher in 22. Injuries are the only thing keeping Browning from being a consistent problem off the edge for opposing offenses. Do we want injuries?
Bad enough.
All right. His closest comparison would be like a Shaquille Barrett 2019. All right, so how about Dea Obiingbo, Indianapolis Colts? His closest comparison is the 2016 Vinny Curry. Now, he's had a steady ascent over his NFL career after he sustained an Achilles injury during the pre-draft process. But that didn't stop him past the second round of the 2021 NFL Draft. So he's he's in a position to get his second contract. Now, his game has rounded into form over the past 2 seasons. It's headlined by 8 sacks in 23, followed by career-high 7 tackles for loss or no gain on 67% of snaps played in 24. So he's a high rotational player, right? He's not a an every down guy. He's a high rotational player, which I hope that they start utilizing Aiden in a manner like that where he doesn't have to play 90% of the snaps.
Interesting, yeah.
Not moving the needle. Chase Young, I'm sick of hearing Chase Young. He's not coming to Detroit. So here's a guy, and this is where I'm going to try to say that, I would love to have Myles Garrett. He's the only name that has ever made sense to me, but it's never made sense fiscally for me because I know that Brad, from what he's done so far, if he continues the same trend that he's done since 2021, he is not going to F them picks. The only way it works for Myles Garrett is that Aiden does not get extended this year. And then you bring in Myles Garrett because then you're shifting what you would have paid in an extension money and sign-on bonus to Myles Garrett in his contract. Myles Garrett would have to restructure his contract to make it fit within the confines of what the Lions are trying to do. So these are all very difficult hurdles. And this is why it takes so long to do. It's not easy. This is going to go on for a while. I would be surprised if we don't hear a trade at the very earliest the week before the draft. I think is probably when we would hear the first shoe drop that something's getting worked on. Probably the week before the draft. If it goes past the draft, you can forget about it. It's going to take until training camp then at a minimum. And even then, if they haven't received the right amount for Myles Garrett, he's not going to move. But here's the guy. This is the one. This is not even an edge, really. But this is the one guy that I took a look at yesterday when all this was going down. And I'm thinking, how can the Lions add to their roster without giving up a ton? And his name is Azeez Ojulari. Now, Azeez Ojulari obviously is hitting the free agency market. He played out his rookie contract in New York. He's a Georgia product. We know that Brad Holmes likes Georgia. He's brought in some players from Georgia over the past couple of seasons. He's a very hot name right now at the trade deadline, or was a very hot name at the trade deadline of last season. He was somebody that I discussed in place of Zadarius Smith. So I would love to know, which I never will find out, what Brad Holmes thought about Azeez Ojulari back then. Now he's 24. He's 6'3". He's got 34.5-inch arms, 10.5-inch hands. So he matches perfectly to my size limits that I try to impose on players like this. He's not a true edge defender. He's more of an outside linebacker, which the Lions desperately need help at. He's only 240 pounds. No real injury history outside of an ankle and a hamstring in 2023. He lost several games to that. And then at the combine, he flew. I mean, this dude flew. He ran a sub 4.6. He completely jumped out of the gym, 39.8-inch vertical. And he rated an overall 6.39, which back then was, you're going to be a starter someday. Clearly, he was a starter. Notable achievements while at Georgia, he was a second team All SEC in 2020 and defensive MVP of the 21 Peach Bowl. Towards the end of his college career, after an impressive showing at the Peach Bowl, which was his best game, there were a lot of eyes on him. Certainly doesn't hurt that a prospect's draft status, skyrocketed when the best game of their career was the final game of their career in college. He enjoyed a breakout 2020 season, played and started in 10 games that season, accumulated 22 tackles, 8.5 sacks, 4 forced fumbles. He's very versatile. He was slated to play either outside linebacker or a defensive end at the next position, or at the next level, obviously being the NFL. But he arguably lacks some of the ideal length and height for a D end and weight, and it would require him to bulk up. Now, he obviously hasn't bulked up since he's been in the NFL. He's played at the outside linebacker position, and it served him well. Keep in mind, he has not played every single down, every single game. He's missed quite a few games. And that's why this is a more unique opportunity for the Lions. Here's an NFL overview. He's a full-grown 3-4 outside linebacker with NFL-ready strength and impressive explosiveness. Now, the one thing that I will say is normally you don't take a 3-4 outside linebacker into a 4-3 system. But Ojulari is better in pursuit than he is as an edge setter. What did we need the most last year? We needed a linebacker that could cover. He's quick to slide off a block, either making a tackle or accelerating to pursue in space. He's very quick to close down the gaps. His ability to attack pulling blocks and shutting down potential running lanes, obviously fun to watch on tape. He has quality pass rush burst, very loose limbs, but he has some limited number of pass rush moves, which under the right guidance, he could develop some more pass rush moves. This far into his career, you'd kind of wonder why hasn't that really been developed? Well, some of it's the teacher. Ojulari hasn't really learned to set up blockers yet. That will come. Great strength. Football character, explosiveness, athleticism, all the check marks, they're there. He really won't reach his full potential, in my opinion, until he cultivates these pass rush talents and learns to stay separated, from the rest of the group there. Strengths, he's built like a superhero. Broad chest, muscly arms, tapered waist. Just a complete physical freak. Very humble teammate, according to his teammates. Tremendous football character and IQ. Checkmark Brad Holmes. First freshman in Kirby's Smart era to be named a team captain. Brad Holmes, checkmark. Aggressive play demeanor, has NFL starter written all over it. Dan Campbell, checkmark. Charges into pulling guards like a battering ram, stopping them dead in their tracks. Everybody, checkmark. Very good upper body twitch and strength to unchin and shed blocks. Again, everybody, checkmark. Contact balance to absorb blocks and maintain his base. That's probably one of the most critical things that you can have as an outside linebacker or an edge. Lightning quick playing off blocks, making athletic tackles. Again, check. Gifted change of direction to follow the flow of play. God, we missed that last year. Will alter rush tempo to lull tackles to sleep. Who would have thought that you change up the tempo instead of just going 100 miles an hour all the time, that maybe you throw a curveball, maybe you throw a slider, maybe you throw an off ball, and then you go back with a fastball. Pretty smart. Power chop, swivel hips, very greasy. To flip the edge, dude's incredible on tape. Leverage and power to capture and collapse at a tackle's edge. His strengths they just keep on going and going and going. This is just from watching some of his tape. He has some weaknesses like everybody does. He's very strong, but he is undersized as a true edge. But we need an outside linebacker. He doesn't play with the desired knee bend to help him anchor and slide around the side like we would see with James Houston at times. I don't think we always need that from somebody like that. We need an outside linebacker. He will need to get off centered blocks more quickly. He does limit his go-to move as a pass rusher. He does give away a rush plan prematurely, so he will have to identify some pause, some patience. Rarely threatens tackles with quality counters. You can learn that. You can learn some hand fighting techniques. Relies primarily on a stuff and run attack to try to find the edge. So if you were reading this, Riley, if you're reading this about a potential free agent that is only 4 years into the system, what would your quick judgment or evaluation be based on what the Lions are missing? Because we don't really have anybody signed past this year other than Jack Campbell. We've got injuries up the wazoo in the linebacker room, and we don't really have a good coverage linebacker. So if you're switching from, okay, we can't get Myles Garrett, it's too much money, but what can we bring in? How does this start to stack for you?
I was sold completely about a third of the way through what you were saying. And it just got more and more. I'm like, sold. It's a perfect fit. And you spelled out why. You have to have the complementary player. We talk about the person as well. But what you could get out of him, you can get, he's not Myles Garrett, right? But you can get, what would you say, 70% of the production, maybe not 70%, but as a complementary piece to the players that we already have versus the cap that we've got available, I think that he would be a perfect fit. Actually, I'm expecting him in Detroit now based off of what you've spelled out.
I would love to see it. Injury history, like I said, he's played just in 18 of 34 regular season games. So his body's still pretty fresh. He hasn't gone through all the car crashes. But he suffered this calf injury in training camp of 2022. So he lost weeks 1 and 2 there. Then he suffered an ankle and a quad injury, and he lost weeks 5 through 11. And then he was inactive for week 18. He played in just 7 games in 2022. He did finish, though, in 7 games with 5.5 sacks. In 23, he had an ankle injury that cost him weeks 2 and 3. He had a hamstring injury that cost him weeks 6 and 9. And he was limited to just 11 games, only finished 2.5 sacks that year. Kind of a down year for him. But then in 2024, he was out weeks 13 through 18 with a toe injury. And somehow, through the first 12 games of the season, and I think there was a bye week in there. So it might have been 10 games, 11 games of the season. He still had 6 sacks and 7 TFLs for a guy that played less than half the season or right around half the season. Those are good numbers to me. Mm-hmm. And on a defense that you already have an Aiden on the left, and you put Aziz as the right outside linebacker, and then you've got DJ, obviously there, Aleem whenever he shows up, and then whoever we add on the right side, Josh Paschal currently is that guy. Now you're shooting Aziz to get after the quarterback, or you have a guy in pursuit against the Jaden Daniels, Jalen, the Hurts, the Josh Allen. You got a guy that can maintain that whole right side because of his speed and his ability. He's someone who likes to get his hands up and knock down passes too, which is I love that when we see that. So what kind of happened to him, right? The offseason trade for Brian Burns with the Giants kind of turned Ojulari into a third wheel on the edge for the Giants. If Ojulari could have stayed healthy, it seemed likely that defensive coordinator Shane Bowen could find ways to kind of get him on the field. And this is kind of where I really love Aziz more. He would also qualify as a quality depth behind Burns or Kayvon Thibodeau, but again, you've got a stacked component here on the New York Giants defensive line. So in the 2024 season, it was the final audition for his rookie contract. His performance obviously will determine whether he remains a Giant, beyond 2024, or what kind of a contract he's going to get from the Giants or from another NFL team. Now we know that Ojulari is expected to leave New York and explore options. He is going to hit free agency. The market for Ojulari may not be as big as what he had hoped, but then again, it could be a little bit bigger. But based on the information that I pulled, his early projected price tag is looking like a 1-year prove-it deal at $5 million. And now I've reviewed both SpoTrack and Over the Cap. I have the premium subscriptions. And what I came up with was a little bit different. I came up with a 2-year, $15 million max deal or a 1-year, $8 million max deal. I would be good with either. And I think that he would probably be good with that to kind of reprove his career again. And then he'll get his max deal after this deal. So I think for us to evaluate why the Giants would move on, we have to look at what happened to the defense overall. It really began and ended with Wink Martindale. The Giants' defensive personnel had largely been selected for their fit in Martindale's aggressive man coverage-based blitz-happy defense. Sound familiar? Sounds real familiar, doesn't it? It's exactly what the Lions have. Yeah. We have a aggressive man coverage-based blitz-happy defense. Those schemes require a very different skill set from the quarters cover 4 based zone scheme favored by none other than Shane Bowen while at Tennessee. Aziz Ojulari is a 4-3 backer, stuck in a 3-4 system. He was better in a Wink Martindale system. So again, total tackles, 107, sacks 22, 4 forced fumbles, 3 pass deflections, 3 fumble recoveries. He's played in 35 regular season games and 2 postseason games, so 37 regular season games. It's 24 stats, played in 11 games, 12 tackles, 6 sacks. Style of play, as I've said, he's known for his aggressiveness, his relentless pass rushing style, but it's more so his work on the edge, his work as an outside linebacker, his ability. Really, I mean, if you were to put him in a coverage zone type of a scheme, he can cover, right? He can cover these tight ends. He can make sure that the quarterbacks don't get outside and break contain. He's been very consistent when he's on the field, right? Often seeing a high snap count due to his effectiveness as a pass rusher. In the 24 season, he was on the practice field, or he was on the field for a significant portion of defensive plays, and it really showcased his duration and stamina. So he did have a kind of a bounce back year from that. Like I said, about his sacks, recorded 22 sacks during his career with 6 sacks in the 24 season alone. His sack count is among the highest for linebackers in the league, highlighting his impact on the defensive line. I mean, so his ability to consistently pressure quarterbacks would be a huge asset for the Lions. His 22 sacks in a very limited amount of playing time demonstrates that. Youth, he's young, potential is high. At 24 years old, Ojulari has plenty of room to grow and improve. His aggressive style of play and relentless motor make him a player who can continue to develop and contribute. We have some of the better coaches in the league. We always have. And the new guys that we're bringing in, Calvin Shepard as our DC, clearly knows linebackers. So the type of play that they're going to be able to get out of Ojulari would be even that much better, in my opinion. Versatility. He has versatility as an outside linebacker, and it allows him to play in multiple roles on the defense, up on the line, off the line, outside linebacker role. He can do it all. His impact, obviously, adding a player of Ojulari's caliber would significantly bolster the Lions' pass rush and coverage abilities, making it more difficult for opposing offenses to execute the game plans. Conclusion for me on Oziz, I think he would be a fantastic addition to the Detroit Lions. It's that simple. He's going to be a cheaper option. I think that he would be a very formidable addition to this team from many different facets of the game. It's just, hey, can we get a deal done with him before New York tries to get a deal done with him? Because at $5 million, if that's what they're thinking they're going to get, or if that's all they think that he is worth, I don't know who wouldn't sign him for $5 million. I think that you sweeten the pot a little bit and you bring this guy in and you put him into your system and you turn him back into the player that he can be, just to sweeten the pot. And the Lions have the money to do it. But again, now you're adding a guy that is a proven commodity in the NFL. He hasn't been able to put on a full display because of a few injuries, but these injuries haven't been extremely bad injuries, right? We're not talking ACLs or Achilles or quads or, a quad tear like DJ. So he's still relatively healthy. And like I said, he hasn't gone through all the car crashes. He's missed pretty much half of his career, it seems like. But that doesn't shy me away from him. I think that he's now stuck in a system that doesn't really fit what they brought him in originally to do. And that's why I think that New York could end up walking away, because they've gone to a different defensive style. And his original defensive style kind of fits Detroit. So in my opinion, I think it's a perfect opportunity. It's the buy low, it's low risk, high reward. I think that he would be a perfect fit with, Anzalone and Jack Campbell and Azeez Ojulari as our three main, starting linebackers. I think we're solid. And then you can keep a guy, Malcolm Rodriguez, give him an extra year to get healthy. If he's not going to be ready to go, because more than likely he's not going to be ready to go. Derek Barnes, I'm not even sure when he's going to be back. Again, he's a free agent. So you'd have to work your magic. Do you really want to bring Derek Barnes back knowing that he's injured and a free agent? To me, that's the kind of a Brad Holmes move that you're shooting yourself in the foot.
Mm-hmm.
Because he did it with Emmanuel Mosley. Okay, well, we're only going to give him $1 million, but he never played.
Mm-hmm.
You wasted a roster spot. Those are the types of decisions I don't want to see.
Yep.
I don't want to see a wasted roster spot. Some guys that you don't want to give up, well, sometimes you just have to.
You can do it!